Hey, I'm Lando, an IB MIB student. As you can see, this is a personal computer assembly tutorial video. I will teach you step by step on how to assemble your PC. Don't worry, the video is easy to follow. I'll clarify everything about the computer for you. Before starting to purchase these components, please watch this tutorial to have a preliminary understanding of all, to avoid purchasing wrong or inappropriate PC parts. A brief introduction will be given about the parts and accessories. After that, we are going to be assembling the PC and installing the system. A common PC is divided into 8 components, namely processor, motherboard, memory, storage, cooler, power supply, graphics card, and case. In the follow tutorial, I would like to refer to them as CPU, motherboard, RAM, SSD, cooler, PSU, GPU, and case respectively. All the things used in the video have been listed in the introduction link in the video. Due to limited funds, fundamental accessories are used for teaching demonstrations. You may refer to this plan to purchase, and the total price is around 1,100 ringgit. All you need to prepare is a screwdriver, Phillips TH-1, and also an additional USB flash drive with at least 8 GB storage. Without further ado, let's get started. CPU is the brain of the computer, which is responsible for processing tasks and solving problems. In order for the CPU to run, it must be first installed on the motherboard. Nowadays, typical CPU brands are being divided into Intel and AMD. This is an Intel Core i3-12100, which has 4 cores and 8 threads. You can understand it as having 4 workers and 8 hands. The naming method of the CPU is series plus class plus generation plus additional information. For example, Core i3-12100. Core is a series, i3 refers to class, 12 represents the 12th generation. Generally speaking, the larger the Intel CPU class, the stronger the performance. The larger the generation number, the more advanced the architecture. The following 3 digits are the larger the number, the stronger it will be in the same generation. At the same time, some CPU models will have letters after them, such as F, K, and S. Among these letters, F means no integrated graphic cards, K means overclockable, S stands for the special selected version. The Core series is Intel's most popular CPU series, which can meet various common needs for home, work, study, and gaming. Core series is going to be our focus today. Picking up this i3-100, we'll find that there's many capacitors and metal contacts behind. There are 1,700 contacts in total, so Intel affectionately named it as LGA 1700, the land grid array package CPU with 1,700 contacts. The update in generation leads to a better performance. In certain generations, it will create a change in the package. For example, a comparison between the 11th generation CPU and the 12th generation CPU can be made, where the difference in the amount of contacts and the change in shape can lead to both CPU being incompatible without their respective sockets. The motherboard is more complicated than the CPU. Intel's consumer motherboards model are generally divided into 3 types, H, B, and Z. A more powerful motherboard can accommodate a more powerful CPU. Motherboards from different manufacturers have different naming methods. The 12th generation CPU in our hand will be installed on this MSI H610M motherboard. Strictly speaking, H610 is actually the model of the motherboard's chipset, which is a sub-switch. It is located in the lower right corner of the motherboard and is covered by a heatsink. Its function is to communicate with the CPU and other I/O interface on the motherboard. We look at the center of this motherboard. The larger the rectangle slot, the large rectangle slot in the middle is the 12th generation LGA 1700 package, which is a CPU slot. It is protected by a plastic cover. There's no need to open the cover before installation. There will be a metal handle on the right side of the slot. Press it hard and push it to the outside. Then lift up the metal frame and the cover will be opened. Observing the slots, you'll find that there's a densely packed pins in the slot. These pins are very fragile. Please do not touch them with your hands or screwdrivers. There's two small protrusions on the top and bottom of the CPU slot. If you look at the CPU, you'll find two notches on the top and bottom. Pick up the CPU carefully, align it with the notch on the motherboard, and put it vertically into the slot. Use your finger to gently draw circles on the top of the CPU. If there's no lifting or shifting of the CPU, that means the installation is successful. Now, put the metal cover down. Hold the motherboard steadily with one hand and firmly press down on the metal handle with the other hand to push it back into its original position. It is normal for the plastic protective cover to pop up. If it does not pop up automatically, just remove it by hand. At this point, the CPU installation is complete. RAM is the draft paper of the computer. It is responsible for processing small and fast data. It is a good helper for the CPU. There are many models of RAMs, and the most common model now is DDR4. In the past, there were DDR3 and DDR2, and in recent years, new DDR5 models have appeared. Common DDR4 RAMs has a capacity of 8 GB, which can be used for light entertainment, audio and videos, and office work. If you want to play large-scale games, as well as 3D modeling, graphics design, programming, or video editing, it is recommended to use 16 GB of RAM or above. Observing the RAM, you'll find that there's a gap in the middle of the golden finger under the RAM. This gap is used to distinguish different models, which prevents problems caused by mixing use of RAM modules. Some RAMs come with a cooling vest, while others don't. They're essentially the same, but one looks better. On the 12th generation Intel platform, the H610 chipset can support DDR4 memories with a maximum frequency of 2200 MHz. Frequency refers to the speed of the memory. When choosing memories, be sure to check the highest memory frequency supported by the CPU and the motherboard. The Kingbank 8GB DDR4 RAM is being used here as a demonstration. Looking at the motherboard, the memory slots are on the right side of the CPU. Ordinary motherboards will have 2 memory slots, and high-end motherboards will have 4. If you have one RAM and the motherboard have 2 slots, please install it to the closest slot to the CPU. If you have one RAM and the motherboard have 4 slots, please install it in the second slot from the CPU. If you have 2 RAMs and the motherboard have 4 slots, please install them in the second and fourth slot from the CPU. If you have 4 RAMs, just plug them all in. You can search for memory dual channel to get more knowledge on why we plug in RAM like this. It is not recommended to install 3 RAM as it will cause system instability. If you want to install 2 or more RAMs, be sure to choose the same brand, same model, and same frequency. To install the RAM, first turn the switches on both ends of the RAM slot upwards. Some motherboards only have switches on the end. Some motherboards only have switches on one end. There will be a small bridge in the RAM slot on the motherboard, and there will also be a small notch on the RAM's golden finger. Align it with the sockets and insert memory vertically into the slot. Use both hands to hold down both ends at the same time and press it down until you hear a click. The switches at both ends will close itself. If they're not closed, you can manually close them. At this point, the memory installation is complete. Next is the installation of the hard drive. Hard drives are divided into solid-state drives and mechanical hard drives. In this video, we'll be installing the M.2 solid-state drives. Sometimes mechanical hard drives have a cheaper price and larger storage capacity, but since the speed is slow, we're not going to use them here. Before purchasing an M.2 SSD, please check whether the motherboard has such an M.2 SSD socket. If not, there is a high probability that your motherboard does not support M.2 SSD. M.2 slot of some high-end motherboards is hidden under the heat rest. Find a screw like this and unscrew it to see the slot. The Kingbank KP230 is used here as a demonstration. When you pick up the M.2, you'll find that there's a row of gold fingers on one section of the hard drive and a small gap. The other end is a large notch for fixing the screws. Observe the M.2 slots on the motherboard, which is usually under the CPU. The slots on the motherboard are usually pre-installed with a screw post. Please remove them all first and install the corresponding screw post for the length of your M.2 SSD. There are usually screws attached to the screw post. Please unscrew them in advance. If there are no screws, they are most likely to be included in the part package of the motherboard. Next, pick out the hard drive, align the gold finger with the slot, and insert it into the slot at an angle of about 30 degrees. Press down the taut hard drive with one finger. Pick up the screwdriver with the other hand, and use the screws to fix the hard drive to screw the post. Do not tighten it too much here, as long as it can be fixed stably. At this point, the installation of the M.2 hard drive is over. The CPU will emit heat when it's working. To ensure that the CPU is within the appropriate operating temperature, we need to install the cooler above the CPU. Common coolers on the market today are divided into two categories: air-cooled radiators and water-cooled radiator. Here we're going to focus on the air-cooled radiator. For the choice of coolers, you can refer to the Intel's official instruction on CPU power consumption. To put it simple, H610M is recommended to use a full heat pipe tower cooler, not recommended to use the Intel's original RM1 downward pressure cooler, as its effect and efficiency is far behind of a tower cooler. What we have in our hand is a Thermalright AX120SE full heat pipe tower cooler. Its cooling power can reach up to 180 watts. It has a very high cost performance and can hold up most of the entry-level CPU. Different coolers manufacturers have different installation methods. For specific steps, you can refer to the installation instruction inside the cooler to install it yourself. In the packaging, we can find the buckles for installing the CPU and the screws needed. We fix the backplate of the cooler behind the motherboard and install the brackets of the cooler with matched screws. Next, you need to apply silicone grease to the CPU. Silicone grease is a material with strong thermal conductivity, and it's used to fill the gap between the CPU and the cooler to improve heat dissipation efficiency. Some high-end coolers will pre-apply silicone greases to the bottom of the cooler. If so, there's no need to apply it again. The amount of silicone greases should not be too much, just draw a small cross is fine. Now pick up the cooler body. Please be sure to check whether there is protective film on the bottom of the cooler or not. If there is a film, please tear it off before installation. Place the fan side of the cooler toward the memory slot and the other side toward the I/O panel. Place the cooler smoothly on top of the CPU. Hold the cooler steadily with one hand and tighten the screws with a screwdriver in the other hand. Please do not tighten the screw all the way here. You should tighten each of the two screws a little. Slowly tighten the screws and secure the cooler smoothly. If you have 4 screws, tighten the screws in a diagonal pattern. Some coolers do not have screws but use pressure buckles to install them. For specific installation method, please refer to the instruction that comes with the cooler. The last step is to find the fan power connector near the CPU on the motherboard. There is a 4-pin interface. Usually, CPU fan will be marked near the motherboard. Pick up the fan power connector on the cooler and you'll find 2 plugs on one side. And the slot on the motherboard will also have a corresponding large plug. Align both of them and insert it into the power interface. Some coolers without temperature control have 3-pin interface. In this case, you can just install them as usual. Just leave the extra pin corners on the motherboard blank. At this point, the installation of the CPU cooler is complete. The power supply is the heart of the computer. It converts household AC power into the DC power required by the computer. Common PSU are ATX size. Most PC cases use ATX power supplies with a length, width, and height of 150 x 86 x 140 mm. Please confirm with the PC case manufacturer that the power supply can be installed into the PC case before purchasing. The power supply is divided into full module and non-module. The full modular power supply allows you to disable the power cord and wheel, and can customize the choice of cables and power cords. Non-modular are direct power supply. All wires are integrated together. This type of power supply is the most common. It is cost-effective but not as beautiful and neat as a full module. To know specifically how much voltage your computer requires, you can search for computer power consumption calculator to calculate the computer's minimal power consumption requirements. Here, I will use a DeepCool PF400 as a demonstration. And the PC case chosen is Invasion's MATX bottom power supply PC case GB09. First, open the back panel of the PC case. Different PC case back panels are opened in different ways. Some use screws, some use buckles, and some use magnetic sections. Please refer to the PC case manual for details. After opening the back panel, we find that there is a separate area at the bottom of the PC case. This area is the location of the power supply. You can find such external hexagon groove screws in the external hexagonal cross screws in the accessory box of the PC case, which are used to fix the power supply. Place the power supply with the fan facing down and the switch facing outwards, and place it smoothly into the power supply compartment. Hold the power supply with one hand, take out the screwdriver with the other hand, and find 4 screw holes on the contact surface between the outside of the PC case and the power supply, generally on the 4 corners. Tighten the screws one by one and check whether the power supply is stable and does not shake. At this point, the installation of the power supply is complete. Now we need to put the motherboard installed earlier into the case. The sides of the PC case are divided into ATX, MATX, and ITX. The motherboards also come with ATX, MATX, and ITX sides. ATX is the largest, MATX is the second, and ITX is the smallest. Before purchasing the case and the motherboard, please first contact the manufacturer or search on your own to make sure the motherboard can fit into the case. Most ATX cases can accommodate most motherboards, include ATX, MATX, and ITX, but it is definitely impossible to install an ATX motherboard in an ITX PC case. Generally, the common motherboards on the market are MATX models, while most PC cases are ATX models. Before starting to install the motherboards, we need to complete the installation on the I/O panel. The I/O panel will be included with the purchase of the motherboard. Its function is to prevent dust from entering the PC case and keep it clean and beautiful. There is a rectangle empty slot on the upper back of the PC case where the I/O buffer is installed. Now, let's start the installation of the motherboard. First of all, you must determine how many screw holes your motherboard has. Look at the motherboard carefully. The MSI H610M used here is MATX motherboard. It has 6 screw holes and requires 6 screws and 6 screw posts. You can find extra screw posts and flat Phillips screws in the motherboard accessory package. You also most likely to find the pre-installed screw post on the case. In order to ensure correct and safety, please remove all the screw posts on the PC case first, and install the required screw posts according to the position of the motherboard screw holes. Installing more or less will not work. There is a high probability that the motherboard will be short-circuited and burned. After installing the screw post, insert the motherboard into the PC and align the screw holes with the screw post. You can also align them by referring to the position of the I/O backplate interface. Pick up the screwdriver and screw the flat cross screws into the screw holes one by one. Don't tighten it too much here, just make sure the motherboard is stable and doesn't shake. At this point, the installation of the motherboard is over. Congratulations! 80% of the entire installation process has been completed here. Next is the last step, which is also the most difficult and complicated part of the installation: connecting cables. In order for the components in the computer to work properly, the cables on the power supply need to be connected correctly to the corresponding position. However, before you start connecting the power cord, you need to connect the PC case from panel jumpers. Inside the case, you'll find a bunch of cables extending from the front panel. If you want the interface on the case to work properly, you need to connect these cables to the correct location. The first is the switch jumper, which is a bunch of very small wires. They usually appear together. There are 5 types in total, namely Power SW, Reset SW, HDD LED, power LED plus and power LED minus. On the motherboard, we can find the pin header called F panel, which usually looks like this. The jumper interface of different motherboard models arranged different, which can be determined by observing the table marked next to it. Next is a USB jumper. USB jumper are divided into USB 2.0 and USB 3.0, which looks like this. Find socket marked USB on the motherboard, and you will find the missing pin corner. This is also an empty pin corner on the end of the cable. Just align them and insert them. The USB 3.0 connection is simpler. Just find the search and interface on the motherboard and insert it into the gap. The last is audio jumper. Find the socket marked audio on the motherboard. You'll find the missing pin corner. This is also an empty pin corner on the end of the wire. Just align them and insert them. Next is the connection of the power cord. Pick up the computer power supply wire, which can be divided into 4 major categories: motherboard power supply, CPU power supply, graphics card power supply, and universal power supplies. The motherboard power supply is the largest one, with a total of 20 plus 4 pins corners. The CPU power supply is usually 4 plus 4 pin, and the graphic card's power supply is 6 plus 2 pin, but we're not going to use here. Be careful to not confuse with the CPU and graphic card's power supply. Pick up the motherboard power supply, pass it through the wire hole from the back of the PC case, and find the 24-pin power socket on the edge of the motherboard. There's a small bump on the side, and there's also a buckle on the end of the wire. Align the two and insert them into the motherboard, just the power socket on the edge. The power supply slot of the CPU is generally in the upper left corner of the motherboard. Also pull the cable from the back to the front through the wire hole, snap it and insert it. Now all the installation steps are over. You can now connect the power supply and try to turn it on, but now the computer cannot be used normally because the system is not installed. You can take this opportunity to try whether the computer can run properly into the BIOS or not. If possible, I suggest you to organize the cables on the back of the case. Regarding the cable management of the PC case, it is a more complicated tutorial. I suggest that you search for other people's cable management tutorial and follow along. At this point, the cable connection is completed. The last step is to install the system onto the hard drive. The most common Windows 10 system will be used here as a demonstration installation. Before you start, you need to prepare an empty USB flash drive of at least 8 GB, another computer, and the power on your new computer, and connect the monitor, keyboard, and mouse. Search download Windows 10 on another computer. Click on the first official Microsoft website and download the Windows 10 installation media. Plug in your pen drive, open the program, and follow the instruction in the video. After installing the program, unplug the USB flash drive and insert it into the USB interface of a newly assembled computer. Please be sure to insert it into the blue USB interface on the back of the computer to ensure to have the fastest and most stable transfer speed. Switch on the computer's power, connect the keyboard and mouse, and press the power button to turn it on. When the brand logo appears, quickly click the delete key and enter the BIOS interface. Motherboards from different manufacturers have different ways of entering the BIOS. Here are the BIOS buttons of several common brands. After entering the BIOS, you can see all statuses of the computer here, include fan speed, CPU voltage, speed, memory status, and total computer power consumption. But these are not important. We need to find the priority startup item and switch it to UDisk boost. After following the steps in the video, save and exit the BIOS, the computer will automatically restart and enter our pre-installed Windows installation system. Please follow the step in the video below. If you can successfully assemble the computer, congratulations! That's all for this installation tutorial. Thank you also for watching to the end. This video is my school's personal project, a project that I took half a year to make. The video does not have any ads and does not make any money. Please like it and support it. I will try to post more videos when I have free time from school. Due to limited space and funds, it is a pity that there is no installation tutorial of wireless network cards, independent graphic cards, PC case fan, and other hardwares. Many contents are not explained in detail. I would like to apologize to everyone here. This is also my first time doing an installation tutorial. If you have any mistakes or suggestions, please feel free to point them out in the comment area. If you have any questions, you can also ask them in the comment area, and I will try my best to answer them. I'm Leno. Thanks for watching and see you next time.